Hello and welcome to MEELive. I'm Matilda Mallinson.
And I'm Tamara Hamani. Today is Thursday, 6th of November.
On today's show, we look at the road ahead for Zohran Mamdani and ask, is it make or break for the left? New York City just got a new mayor. It's youngest in a century, first immigrant in half a century, and first Muslim mayor ever.
He won 1 million votes for the first time since 1969, and did it pretty much without his own party's full backing.
He's been called a Marxist, a jihadist, and Trump's worst nightmare.
I have never stolen hundreds of millions of dollars from the MTA. I have never hounded the 13 women who credibly accused me of sexual harassment. I have never sued for their gynecological records, and I have never done those things because I am not you, Mr. Cuomo. And furthermore, the name is Mamdani, M-A-M-D-A-N-I. The name is Mamdani, M-A-M-D-A-N-I. The name is Mamdani, M-A-M-D-A-N-I. You should learn how to say it, M-A-M-D-A-N-I.
Zoran Mandani. On Tuesday, Mamdani won more than 50% of the vote in a three-way race to become the mayor of New York City in January.
So what does his win mean for America? What does it mean for the world? To answer, we'll be joined by MEE's US editor Shahreyar Mirza, New Yorker Simone Zimmerman of the Beyond Israelism show, and US political commentator Katie Halper.
But first, we have Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks to look at just how globally significant this local election was. Cenk, more than 2 million voters cast ballots in the biggest turnout in a New York mayoral race in at least 50 years. But these levels of engagement, they weren't just in New York. It was a local election and the world was watching. Why?
Yeah, there's two different factors here as to why this was such a monumental race, both in America and across the world. One is that he was running against the establishment. So here in America, our politicians are basically corporate Democrats and corporate Republicans. That's why a lot of his own party didn't back him, because they're backed by corporate donors. And so he took on the machine and he beat the machine. So that's why people are elated. They can't believe that someone beat the machine. Now, we've done this before. I helped Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez win in New York before, another spectacular upset victory. And there's been instances, and Bernie obviously ran against the machine, and Bernie Sanders nearly won twice. But this was a seminal moment because of that. And then the second reason, and why it drew international attention, is because he was basically running against the Israeli lobby. They spent $40 million on him, and this was New York giving a middle finger to the Israeli lobby and to the establishment, saying, no, Israel doesn't run New York. New York runs New York. And if we want, we'll pick a Muslim mayor. And he got a lot of Jewish American votes. He got votes from everyone. And I love it. And it represents what's best about America. All of us coming together to form a rebellion against overlords, whether they're foreign governments or corporations.
We need to talk about Islamophobia because it is always central in that debate about Palestinian rights and Israel, but it was incredibly defining of the movement against Zoran Mamdani. I mean, over the course of his campaign, we saw Islamophobia come out of the woodwork and enter mainstream politics and media shamelessly. Let's just take a quick look at what I'm talking about.
Hey, to all my Jewish New Yorkers, tonight we celebrate Rosh Hashanah with a festive family dinner and dance joyfully to the beloved song, Jihada, Nagil Jihada. I embrace all cultures. I love bagels, and I also love Hamas.
Hummus.
Hummus.
And then turns around and defends the phrase globalize intifada. And he puts these videos out online of him eating rice with his hands, which, by the way, is not something that Americans do. That is third world behavior.
Clear, unequivocal, and on the record. I believe Zoran Mamdani poses a danger to the security of the New York Jewish community.
God forbid another 9/11. Can you imagine Mamdani in the seat? And there's
I could. He'd be cheering.
It's another problem. But can you imagine that?
It's actually hard to watch some of those clips. But I guess my question is, did Mamdani win despite this ugly and racist politics, or because of it?
Yeah, partly because of it, because people are tired of all this racism and bigotry against Muslims. But only the voters and the citizens are. This is an international audience. Well, you guys should know that in America, we're occupied. Our media is ridiculous. So they will say the most racist things against Arabs, the most bigoted things against Muslims, and no one will blink an eye. And then, you'll criticize Israel in the mildest way against the genocide. And they'll be like, oh, my God, we care so much about bigotry. Everyone's an anti-Semite. So the propaganda here is so overwhelming. And they don't think twice about being deeply bigoted against Muslims. So Randy Fine, for example, is a U.S. congressman from Florida. He said that we should drop a nuclear bomb on Gaza, kill everyone in it. He said we should starve everyone in Gaza. And no one is taking any action against him. No one's trying to cancel him. No one finds it objectionable. It's amazing. It's amazing. You can say anything you want against Muslims, and American media will cheer you on. And there's this absurd thing of if you do not bow down to a different government, and it doesn't really matter what government it is, whether it's Peru or Kazakhstan or Israel, but like these guys in the New York press and the national media, they were outraged that Mamdani wouldn't promise to serve Israel. And that's why this is such an important election, because this is the American voters, and in New York, one of the most Jewish cities in the world, saying, no, we reject American media. We reject American politicians that are all taking the donor money from corporations and foreign governments, and we are picking one of our own. And one of our own means an American, and we don't care what his religion is. That's why if you're watching out there, don't lose hope in America. You see the American voters are doing the right thing. The minute they have the right message and they hear it, they actually vote in the right direction. The number one problem we have in this country is our media and our politicians, which are completely bought off, again, not just by Israel, but all of the giant multinational corporations. They don't serve the citizens at all.
Do you think they'll learn from this, though? I mean, those using this propaganda, it didn't work. There is now a Muslim as New York mayor, and the people voted for him. Do you think that those using this propaganda will learn the lesson and maybe rethink it in future?
No, they'll never learn. We have to defeat them one by one in each race until they finally run out of money or surrender. Because no, the Israeli lobby in this country, again, if you don't live in America, you have no idea how suffocating it is. Every time I do an appearance, every time anybody does an appearance that criticizes Israel by 1%, they try to ruin their lives. There's a bunch of thugs that live here in America, and unfortunately, a lot of them are media executives and top politicians, and they terrorize this country. Now they're trying to fire an average American that even puts up a Palestinian flag in their social media. They're trying to get rid of anyone in America who would dare to criticize Israel. So no, they're never going to learn. They're going to spend billions of dollars against any politician, by the way, on the left or the right, okay, that dares to say we should represent Americans. Right now, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tom Massey are two of the most right-wing figures in American politics, and Israel's trying to defeat them. So why are they against the most right-wing and the most left-wing and everyone in the middle? Because anyone who doesn't say that they will serve Israel loyally is going to get tens of millions of dollars spent against them. And we're just going to have to keep defeating them until they run out of money.
Mm-hmm. Gaza was definitely one of the key issues on which Mamdani campaigned and on which he won. But he was an outlier in a number of ways. Economically, he openly calls himself a socialist. That was a term used as a smear by his opponents, who called him a Marxist and a communist. The Democrats, the established Democrats, were wary of associating with him for this reason. And yet he won by a landslide. So is that a lesson to the left to be more radical? Or is this, New York specific, and extrapolating it could backfire?
Yeah, so there's two different things there. One is that it is New York specific. If you ran that type of campaign in Kansas, I don't think that it would work, right? And that's okay. Each set of voters should get the representatives that they want. New York wanted someone to boldly try change in a left-wing direction. And so they got what they wanted. Beautiful. That's how democracy should work. And if Kansas wants something a little bit different, or Montana does, no problem at all, right? But really, that's secondary. The primary issue here was he ran on change and actually serving the voters. The number one problem in New York is affordability. So they kept saying, you're Muslim and you're hence everyone should hate you, and you haven't bowed down to Israel, everyone should hate you, and all this like super negative campaign against them, filled with fear and hatred, right? I mean, it's so obvious that they're the bad guys. It's amazing they don't realize it. Like, it's almost like they ran Darth Vader against Mamdani, right? So now on the other side, Mamdani was saying, forget all that. Look, guys, we've got to get prices down in New York. Nobody can afford an apartment. Nobody can afford groceries or going out to dinner. And that's what resonated, because politicians in America have gorged themselves on donor money. And so since they're so obese with how much, corruption that they have fed on their whole lives, they've forgotten about the voters completely. So when Mamdani ran a campaign addressing the voters' concerns, other politicians in America were stunned. They're like, oh, he cares about the voters. That's so weird. And they just couldn't wrap their mind around it. So Cuomo kept running a campaign for the donors. So he would say, oh, I'm going to protect the billionaires and I'm going to protect Israel. That's like 26 people, right? Even in New York, it's only 26 people. When people actually go to vote, they care about themselves, and they should, to look out for. And so we haven't had a politicians looking out for us other than Bernie Sanders and a couple of progressives in a long, long time. So that's why, and look at it, guys. Bernie Sanders is the godfather of this movement in America, and he's Jewish. Mamdani is almost a disciple in a sense, and he's Muslim. You know why? Because religion doesn't matter. We're all Americans. And that's what's beautiful about the concept and the idea of America, that we're all supposed to be equal and we're supposed to get equal justice, right? And so Bernie and Zoran have lived up to that, and I love it, and that's the best of America.
Yeah, and that is definitely
definitely
what Mamdani, said as well that he was going to do. He was going to focus on the voters and talk about the issues voters care about: economics, local economics, rent control being the big one. But globally, there were also policy issues he stands out for, and there's one I really want to talk about. This other big one was immigration.
New York will remain a city of immigrants, a city built by immigrants, powered by immigrants, and as of tonight, led by an immigrant.
I'm an immigration reporter, Cenk. I've been covering this for the past decade, and I can say from that position, it feels like the first victory in a long time for openly pro-migration politics in the West. We have seen far-right anti-migrant politics become a staple of not just the centre-right, but centre-left political parties around the world. Could Mamdani's win serve as a model for others fighting rising xenophobic far-right?
Yeah, look, both of those phenomenon are happening at the same time in America, as I'm sure they are throughout the world, which is that there are people who are very angry about immigration and they don't like change. And so when they see people that look a little different than them, speak different than them, and have a little bit different culture, they get into some cultural friction there. And look, I get where it comes from. I'm an immigrant. I immigrated to America from Turkey when I was 8 years old. And I love this country, and part of the reason I love it is because consistently America has gotten past it. So does it happen? Is it a natural reaction? Yes. Look, I've seen it happen in Turkey with new Syrian immigrants and Afghan immigrants. So no one is immune from this. It's a natural human reaction. But at the same time, should we give in to it? No, of course not. No, we especially in America, where we're built on equality and the idea of equal justice. That's why immigrants come, because we love that idea. We love the idea of hope and the American dream. So, and eventually America always gets past that problem. Not every country does, but America has, with Italian immigrants, Irish immigrants, Jewish immigrants, and now Muslim immigrants and Indian immigrants and Asian immigrants. So we have the problem and we get past it. And this win by Mamdani was a huge part of getting past it. And of all cities, New York is the most immigrant city. So they proudly voted for an immigrant, and I love it.
Of course, winning the election is one thing, and the next part is governing. His model, as you say, it was anti-establishment. But it is one thing fighting the system, and it's another thing fixing it, right? Performance isn't policy making. Do you think he's equipped for the task ahead?
Yeah, he's been incredible at handling the press. So I honestly, I would have been much angrier and confrontational, but he's got that great smile and he did a wonderful job with it. But no one should be under the misimpression that the press is done with him. No, the New York press in particular is vicious, and they hate the left, and they hate anyone who doesn't support Israel. So they will attack him 24/7 from here till his last day. So he'll have to get past. And I've seen this happen even when you minus the Israel issue, like with Bill de Blasio. Bill de Blasio was on the left, and just because he was on the left, the New York press, which is ironic because the New York press the idea is that they're supposed to be on the left. It's a joke. They're not on the left at all. They're like sickeningly right wing. So they attacked Bill de Blasio over and over and over again, and they pummeled him. And it made a big difference in his popularity and in his ability to govern. So I hope that Mamdani can get past that, but he should definitely buckle up and brace for impact, because the American media is gross and always biased.
And I guess the big overarching question here is this a victory for the global left? Because they are certainly taking it as one. You've seen comparisons drawn across left media between Mamdani and other further left local politicians like Zach Polanski here in London. He's a Green Party leader. Is this a global leftist victory, or are they getting ahead of themselves?
No, it's not. And I say that as someone squarely on the left. Okay, so I wish it was a global leftist victory and we're on the march, etc. No, what it was more accurately was a victory for populism in America. So populism in America just means not being corrupt and not taking, giant donor money from corporations and foreign governments. And so that is so rare now in America. It's only about like 2 to 5% of our politicians are clean. And if you don't live in America, you might not know this. Unfortunately, this breaks my heart, but it's become the most corrupt nation on earth because our Supreme Court legalized bribery. So you could literally give tens, in fact, hundreds of millions of dollars. One family alone gave Trump over $330 million. So it's just industrialized bribery. So when you have a clean politician, it's remarkable. And when they win, they have to get past all the money and all of the media, which is the media is 100% on the side of corruption. So it's like a nearly impossible obstacle course. But now populists on the left and the right are beginning to run it. So and yes, there are clean people on the right. We might disagree with them, especially on cultural issues, but people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tom Massey stopped taking corporate PAC money and foreign government PAC money, and it has made all the difference, all the difference. So the minute you get the politicians to be clean, then we're in much, much better shape. So this is actually a great sign for the populist revolution in America, but not necessarily left or right.
A victory not for the left, but for the populists. Cenk Uygur, thank you for your perspective.
Thank you.
Next up, we get into those policies and what lies ahead for Mamdani as mayor.
New York's mayoral-elect Zohran Mamdani has made bold promises to the city's residents, mounting a campaign based on affordability. But promise is one thing, policy is another. Here to discuss the challenging path ahead for Mamdani is Middle East Eye's US editor Shahreyar Mirza. Shahreyar, from rent freezes and free buses to universal childcare and city-owned grocery stores, Mamdani has made some very bold and unprecedented campaign promises. What do you see as some of the largest obstacles to achieving those?
Sorry, I think I'm on mute. Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you, yeah.
Yeah, so I think some of his biggest challenges are probably going to be building a team that can help him achieve what he has set out to achieve. He's already got a transition team in place, which is quite impressive and looks like it's been built to essentially counter some of the criticism of his policies that they're unachievable or they're pipe dreams. He's got a 5-woman team at the moment, including Lina Khan, who's the former FTC chair. He's got people who were part of Bill de Blasio's tenure, people who were also part of Eric Adams' tenure.
So bringing that experience that's so oftenly cited as his weak point, then big names like Lina Khan and so on, who served under the Biden administration.
Yes, and it's diverse experience as well. It's not just people who have worked in government, but it's people who have worked for NGOs and along a lot of the lines of the things that he campaigned upon. Now, we also have to remember that, he's going to have to work with the state assembly. He's going to have to work with the state senate, with the governor. It was a huge win for Mamdani to be able to win over Governor Holko when it comes to things like the MTA.
Sorry, just to explain that abbreviation for our viewers who may not be familiar.
Yeah, so that's the Metropolitan Transportation Authority that basically runs the buses and the metros in this city. His promise of fast and free buses is probably one of the most uphill battles he's going to have. We already know that the MTA has not really been on board with that proposal. So it's a matter of being able to appoint the right people along with the governor, which is more the governor's job to appoint the people who may be on board with that. But still, the mayor is extremely powerful in this city. You've got, the GDP of over $1 trillion that is generated in New York City. It's a budget of over, $250 billion. About 7% of that comes from federal funding, which we may see a problem with when it comes to the showdown between him and Trump.
Yeah, just on that note of federal funding, we know that Trump has kind of threatened potential retaliation against kind of giving federal funds to New York in the event of Mamdani's win.
I think he's terrible. He's a communist. The last thing we need is a communist. I think he's bad news, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun with him, watching him, because he has to come right to this building to get his money. Frankly, I've heard he's a total nut job.
We know that New York was set to receive over $7 billion in federal funds the next fiscal year, which would be about 6% of its budget. Do you worry that if the Trump administration chooses to take punitive action against New York, that it could seriously hinder some of Mamdani's more ambitious affordability plans?
It really depends. He still has control over such a large portion of the budget, a 300,000 people strong staff. Whether it comes to appointing people on the rent guidelines board, that those 9 members are appointed directly by the mayor. So he still has a lot of power. Also, does this mean that Donald Trump is trying to get into a fight with the rest of New York, which is Wall Street as well, where he derives a lot of influence and power from as well? So Trump struck a more conciliatory tone yesterday after, he criticized him, but he said, we'll see, we want New York to succeed. And I think there's a lot of truth in that little piece of information that he gave, is that, there's Wall Street exists here. That's where, Trump has serious relationships with. And does he really want New York to fail just to spite Mamdani? I'm not sure about that. Of course, I think there is going to be hurdles with them working together, but it's really hard to say whether it's going to topple some of the ambitions that he has. I think a lot of them can be managed on the local level and don't necessarily need federal funding. But when it comes to things like education and some of the other policies he may want to put in place, you may see a bigger tussle there.
Obviously, part of the reason for that tension is that New York is Trump's home city, but also because there is a sense that Mamdani represents a moment larger than himself, is a kind of figure that is seen as a bit of an anti-Trump. And so I wonder, because of all this hype and all this expectation around Mamdani, do you think there is a lot at stake, kind of, that voters are almost placing too much hope on him because we live in a time in the US associated with, a federal government that appears to be continuing to centralize and concentrate power and exerting it over states that don't seem to be able to do much to stop that. Do you think almost that there's kind of too much pressure put on Mamdani in this moment, and which could pave the way to disappointment?
There's a lot of hope placed on Mamdani, but I don't think it's necessarily misplaced hope, because some people call him the anti-Trump, but it's an anti-Trump in that there's a lot of parallels and similarities between him and Trump. The Republican Party went further right, when it comes to this whole MAGA movement. And what we saw with the Democrats was that when they were fighting the general election, they didn't go far left enough to try and fight the Republicans, and that's why they took such a big loss. The base of the Democratic Party, especially when it comes to the younger voters, is a lot far left, and is the establishment is quite out of touch with them. So I think that hope that they have placed on Mamdani is something which is kind of well placed, because he does represent a moment where the larger Democratic Party can should actually look to Mamdani to see how they can take on Trump. Obviously, there's so many battles between Trump and the states, and a lot of this election in other states, maybe that weren't as closely watched outside of the US, were a rebuke to Trump's policies. So they didn't necessarily go as far left as Mamdani did, but Mamdani is probably the most successful proponent of how to kind of bring a larger voter base to the Democrats. So I think Trump also fears, and I think a lot of the Republicans fear what Mamdani represents, in that not only is it a great example for the Democratic Party, but it also reflects the changing demographic nature of this country and of its urban centers, where now you are seeing those democratic, those centers, those kind of diverse voting blocks actually able to enact change through a grassroots campaign that was largely grassroots. He didn't, most of the money, he was capped at 12.9 million. He was facing about, over 40 million was spent to defeat him. And it couldn't. Simply, they knocked on 3 million doors, 100,000 volunteers.
Certainly, yeah, the grassroots nature of Mamdani's campaign certainly inspires hope in some and fear, like you said, in his opponents, as you mentioned, because it suggests a genuine movement and a genuine strategy for the Democrats looking forward. So despite all the pressure, there is certainly a lot of hope and faith that's been renewed with his victory. Shahreyar, thank you so much for sharing your commentary with Middle East Eye. It was a pleasure to hear from you today.